Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. On the podcast, we're in Tennessee with another Ohio runner. Now, I'm not a giant fan of boxing, but I do like sometimes the way they do introductions. And I don't know how many chances people will ever have to introduce this guy. So I'm going to say, starting at lightweight as a little kid, moving up in the weight classes, setting national records, winning national championships, winning an Olympic gold medal, Wottle the Throttle, the head waiter. Today, welcome on the podcast, Dave Wottle. Hi, Dave.
Thank you, Matthew. That's the best introduction I've had in many, many years.
Sure. Of course, you're well known to everybody running in the 70s and everybody who's an Olympic fan and a history of running fan. Let's start with your origin story. As a child, how did you get involved in running? And how did you view competition when you started?
Sure. I'll tell you, my beginning in track was lackluster. I started in the 8th grade. One of the teachers got together a group of students and took us outside and wanted to have us run around the grade school. I went to Clarendon Elementary School, and no warm-ups, no exercises. He just lined us up and said, take off. And I took off really fast and I pulled my hamstring. And the next 3 days, I couldn't get out of bed, but I was wondering what was wrong with me. And I remember coming back to school and the teacher got really mad at me. And he said, don't you ever do that again, not telling me what happened. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what happened to me. So anyways, my track career started and ended on the same day. And then I really started in high school. I was playing basketball freshman year, basketball, 14th man on a 15-man squad. Wasn't that good. I remember there was a sign up for track. They had a sign in the halls at Lincoln High School. And I said, might as well try it. I played football. I wasn't that good. I played baseball in the summer. I was so-so, and basketball. And I thought, I'll try track. So I signed up. I signed up for the sprints. I had no idea what I was doing. I went to the room where they had it. Coach talked about all the events, and he said, okay, sign up for what events you think you'd like. And I signed up for the sprints, and that's the way it started out. I parallel you a little bit. I grew up on a playground, played all the sports. I was practice meet on a team that made the Final Four in Pennsylvania small division. Yeah.
So when you would run the lines, were you ahead of everybody back then, or how were you on the basketball team as a sprinter?
No, I thought I was a sprinter. There was a kid in my neighborhood named Robert Kiddo. We called him Bunny. And I thought Bunny was the fastest kid in the world. And one time I jump started him on a downhill sprint and I beat him. So I thought, geez, Dave, you're pretty fast. We had a guy though at Canton, Lincoln. So the first workout we had, coaches trying to figure out what talents the kids have. He lines me up with the sprinters because I'd signed up for it. We had a guy at Canton Lincoln, John Cosmides, who would end up running in high school a 9.65 100-yard dash. Just blitz. That's fantastic for a high school runner. So I line up with John Cosmides. The guy's finishing by the time I come out of the block. And I can remember, I'm not sure it's the exact words Coach Daniels put, but I remember him coming over to me at some point, put his arm on my shoulder and said, Dave, I'm going to send you where I send everybody else with very little talent, to the distance runners. So he sent me outside, and I went outside. There was a park across the street from Lincoln, a 1 block around. And I went there and joined the middle distance runners. And Matthew, probably in the 4th or 5th workout we had, they decided to have a time trial around that park. We didn't have our track was 3 miles away, but so we did a lot of workouts around this park, and they ran a time trial, half-mile time trial, 2 times around the park, basically. And I ended up beating the number 1 ranked Lincoln High School half-miler from the year before. And then I never looked back.
You identified, and at least for a while, thought that the mile was your best event. You won the Ohio high school championship in the mile. This is the end of the
Yeah.
1960s. Was the mile the longest race on track in Ohio? When did you start running the mile, the half mile then?
I've been looking through my notebooks. I started out, most of my early races were in the half mile. I gradually grew into the mile by the end of my freshman year, where the coach would have me run the miles. Men could run 2 miles back then in Ohio. Women could not run 2 miles. They thought it was injurious to their health.
Right. Did you ever run the 2 mile? Did you have a 2 mile relay?
I did. I looked, and my fastest time in the 2 mile in high school was 10:30. I probably ran it once or twice. I would run the mile. Back then, the mile was the third event in a meet, mile, then the half mile, and the mile relay. Coach had me run those three almost all.
Oh, okay. Great. You had a track that was 3 miles away. Eventually, were you training? Was it closer to train or
No,
what did
that
you
was
do for
it.
training?
We
Ah,
ran in Canton back then. There were 4 city high schools. None of us had our own track. So we worked out at Don Scott Field, which was an asphalt 400-meter 440 track. And that's where we would work out, and shin splints all the time. The trainers back then were just horrible. I wore Converse All Stars, low cut All Stars. That's what I used to run in, which had almost no padding on an asphalt track. It was pretty brutal.
but you had talent there in high school. Did your coach have workouts that made sense to you then or later when you look back?
It's interesting. How do I want to put it? It was a step-by-step process. I didn't come out just going gangbusters. Mile time in high school, I was 449, freshman year, 438.5, 422.4, 420.2. So it was just a slow, steady progress. My half mile, I started out, freshman was 2086, 204 flat, 200.3, and 159.3. And my half mile time was really not much. The half mile was always my second race. I really wanted to focus on the mile, and my coach did too. But to answer your question, my coach, Ev Daniels, was a sprinter at Muskingum College. He was a 9.5 sprinter. So he knew sprints, but he wasn't very versatile in the distances. So I probably never ran over 4 or 5 miles, did a lot of quarters on the track. I can't even remember the workouts that I did in track. But I really look at that progression in the mile where I only improved 2 seconds my senior year, mile and a half coming down a second, was because I reached the limit of my natural ability. And my workouts just weren't good enough to keep me going down.
Right. What were you like as an academic student in high school? What was your outlook for were you going to be a runner in college and how'd you get involved with Bowling Green?
Yeah, I was a B student. I was finished. I was 56 out of 295, a B student. First generation. None of my parents, none of my family had been to college yet. But for some reason, I just had this in the back of my mind that I was going to go to college. And I don't know what put it there. It wasn't like my parents were telling me I had to do it because they had not gone themselves. Probably it started out my freshman year because Mel Brote up at Bowling Green, when I was a freshman running a 450 mile, sent me a questionnaire and said, "Hey, I'd love to have you come visit." And I literally visited. My parents took me up to visit Bowling Green when they got that letter. And after all the running and recruitment and everything else, that's where I landed to go to college 4 years later.
Did you know any of the runners at Bowling Green before you arrived?
The reason I went to Bowling Green, because it's an interesting story, Matthew. I was signed, sealed, and delivered to go to Mount Union. Coach Wusty was the coach there. I had run a 420, and so he gave me a full ride to go to Mount. And I had a room, a roommate, a class schedule. I went over to the room and measured for a rug. I was ready. And then I went up to Bowling Green one last time, and Sid Sink was there. Sid, as a freshman, had the fastest steeplechase time in the United States for freshmen. He'd run 9 minutes as a freshman. Bowling Green got fifth in the cross country MAC. They were not a powerhouse. They didn't have a lot of distance runners. They had Paul Talkington and Sid Sink. Paul was the first, and then Sid came afterwards. And after that, we had very little depth. But Sid was the kind of motivator he had me believing that we could be a national pack. And this, if I could get there, we could get a couple more guys, we could do it. And I just caught on fire. He caught me on fire. And or Coach Wusky, I told him like 2 weeks before classes started, I'm going to BG. So it was a last minute change. So I knew Ubstead, didn't know him, but he was the guy who Coach Broach got on me and really did the job.
That's great. Wow, that was how history gets made, those decisions, and
Yeah.
2 weeks from a whole different path. How was it as a freshman joining the team, changing the workouts, and competing in the NCAA?
Matthew, you got to think, I never had cross country or indoor track in high school. Of course, Coach Broach sent us workouts to do over the summer, and I'd do some of those workouts, obviously trying to get ready. But my first workout was 20 quarters with a mile at the end. Heck, I'd only jogged 4 or 5 miles. I have that many miles in 5 miles worth of quarters at 71, 72 with a 1 minute rest interval. It just about killed me. I couldn't believe it. First of all, when he said it, he told me, he says, you got to come up early September for cross country. I'm going, what? I thought I got a track scholarship. I have to run cross country. I've never run cross country before. It was a transition. It was a huge transition. And I never ran in the morning my freshman year. I didn't know anything about running in the morning, and I just didn't feel like I could handle it. So I ran the workouts in the afternoon, but the cross country Sid and Paul and other guys would get up in the morning and run their morning workout. I slept in, and so it took me a while to catch on, but I realized shortly thereafter that I needed to do the morning workouts and I needed to do cross country in order to do well in track.
But you had
We were a strength-based cross-country team, and we were a modified marathon. We ran 70 to 120 miles a week, and everybody did it. It didn't matter if you were a half miler or a 6 miler. You ran the same workouts, basically, and it was based on strengths.
What was your freshman year, 68 or 69 there?
My 68 was cross-country, 69 for track.
Those first 2 years, you had pretty good success at Bowling Green. No injuries?
No major injuries. Yeah. I was only on a third ride. Mel gave me $500 basically for room and board. And it took me until my junior year to where I could get a full ride. He got me pretty cheap. And, of course, Bowling Green was only $1,500 a year back then.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine. And anybody listening, any of the newer runners listening, yeah, talk about how things have changed. We talk about the shoes, no more Converse All-Stars, no more college tuition for a year that now maybe covers a month.
Yeah, it was something. Well, it was something for we were upper middle class, and my dad was a factory worker, and I give them a lot of credit to pass up a full ride amount to go to Bowling Green and have to come up with money. And part of that reason to change was Mount Union's record back then in the mile was 4:17 something. And I'd run 4:20. And I thought, and this is what Sid was getting across, that I'd probably get that record my freshman year, and who's going to push me? And when I went to Bowling Green, I saw Sid there. I could see that he would get the most, and Coach Broach would get the most out of me.
Well, what was the results for Bowling Green and you the first 2 years?
My time went down after getting, cross country and indoor under my belt. I got down to 406.8 my freshman year. My half went down to 154.9, still not a spectacular half time, but again, I wasn't focusing on it that much. Coach Broach, I was going through my notes this morning and my clippings, and he put me in the USTFF before the 1970 NCAA. And he even says it. He said, I don't think we'll do anything in the half. We're just doing a speed workout for the mile. That was his mentality all the way through the Olympic trials. It was the half was a speed workout, but you're prepping for the mile. Remember back then, Matthew, we could not compete on varsity in cross country or in track. We were not able to go to the national meets and compete as freshmen. So that 406.8, and then I ran 154.9. We're both in the MAC in the MAC championship meet. And I didn't run for the varsity because I was a freshman. It was I ran for the USTF for the federation is how you had to do it.
You did have a significant injury in 1971?
Yeah, very significant. Yep. Just to jump over to 69 and 70, I placed 30th in the cross country nationals as a sophomore. And I was later moved up to All American because, with my coaches urging, the NCAA dropped international athletes from All American status. So they knocked 5 people out. I became 25th, which was All American. And then I got second to Marty LaCory in the mile. And so I was that was a breakthrough. My sophomore year, I think I have to talk about sophomore year because that was my breakthrough year. In early June, I broke the 4 minute mile for the first time. Huge. So I went from 406.8 to 359 flat. And then I got about 2 weeks. Then I did the USTF. I ran 147.8 in the half mile, which was my best time in the half that year. And then the following week, I went to the NCAA and ran against LaCory. He ran 359.9 and I ran 4:0.1. But that was the breakthrough. Those 3 weeks was a huge breakthrough in my athletic career, only to be dashed the following year with a series of injuries.
Did you get to know, or had you known personally Marty LaCory by the time you were on the track with him that year?
No,
Okay.
and Marty wasn't real approachable for me. I don't know if Marty and I you got along. We got along. We certainly respected one another, but we were both competitors and wanted to be. Back then, it was interesting, Matthew. I didn't want to get to know, and I'm sad about my personality. I wish I wasn't that way. But I didn't really want to get to know them and be friends with my competitors because I wanted to beat them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I didn't get to know a lot of those guys back then. I wish I would have now, thinking back at it.
When you talk about the next year, your injury, I'd also like you to talk about how not just the idea that things were changing, you couldn't do what you wanted, but how did you can't compete anymore? How was that all part of the mix?
It was horrible. I was rooming with Sid Sake that year, and he'd walk in. He broke the American record in the steeplechase that year. He'd walk in from an invitation with this huge trophy, and I'd be sitting in the room, sitting there going, man, chomping at the bit, and I couldn't do anything. I had 3 injuries. I halfway through cross country at the MAC meet, I developed a stress fracture in my left fibula, knocked me out. I wasn't able to finish the race, and that knocked me out for about 6 weeks. So I wasn't able to go to nationals, which was a disappointment. We had a great team that year. We probably would have been in the top 5 at nationals. In the NCAA, we ended up finishing 8th. And I came back for 3 weeks of training, developed bursitis in my right knee. I was out for maybe 5-6 weeks, came back, trained for 10 days or 2 weeks, and developed a mirror image stress fracture in my right fibula. So I was out all of indoor, outdoor. On Marty LaCory's commenting on the Olympic finals, they go, he wasn't even ranked in the world last year. I didn't run in 71. Back to your question, I hate it. I love to compete, and it was so hard to have an injury, to start coming back from an injury, thinking you're back, and you get another injury, and then it happened again. And it's interesting, on my notes here, I have a note that I scribbled on the back of my log that my dad said. I said, my dad and his friends at Ford say that I should hang up my spikes, but I say I'm going to come back as good as ever. But it was just all these injuries. And one thing I remember about it, my roommate, he was best man at my wedding, but Rick Schicker he called me up. He lived up in Perrysburg. He said, let's go up to Windsor, across from Detroit. There's an all-comers meet. And this was the 1st of June. I got through the 3 injuries. I trained for about 2 weeks. And he goes, let's go on up there. And I can remember the gun goes off 800 meters. I run the first 100 yards, and I just get this big grin on my face, like I'm back. You know that feeling that a runner has when you're on somebody's shoulder. You're just sitting there going, I'm there. I didn't win the race. I got second, but it was just the fun of being back in the competition.
That's what I think everybody who runs middle distance or any distance or ran and experiences and can relate to. That's great. By that point, before the Olympic trials, how far had you traveled? Had you crossed the entire US? Had you gone international by then?
Well, I did go international after I got second to LaCory in 70. I was able to go to the World University Games.
Right,
And
the
that was kind of,
Universidad test.
I went there and learned a very valuable lesson. Stan Huntsman was the coach from Tennessee, and I was in the 800 meters, and I was streaking down the finish to win the race, and I was looking over the left shoulder, and the guy passed me on the right side. And boy, I remember Huntsman just laughed at me and go, "Hey, good lesson you learned. Be aware of where you are in the race." But anyways, that was in Milan, Italy. Was able to do that. But other than that, Coach Brote was a believer that I got an athletic scholarship to go to Bowling Green. He needed me there for dual meets and triangulars. I ran the Wanamaker Mile one time, and on Friday night, he had me running at Western Michigan in a dual meet, and then I'd fly to New York and run the Wanamaker Mile or the U.S. Olympic Invitational. And I understood that. I was also a follower. I was a follower of Sid Sink, and I was a follower of Mel Brote. He told me to do a workout. I did the workout. No questions asked.
Were you full 6 feet by then? And how was
Yeah.
running indoors for you?
Yeah, I was 6 foot, 140, and it was difficult back then. As you remember, Matthew, we had 10, 11 lap tracks. They were banked up 6 foot at each end, and you were swung around there like a slingshot. And we didn't have anything like that to train at Bowling Green. We had no indoor facility. We did all of our training outside in the snow. And then all of a sudden we'd go to a meet, and here we are. I was reading my notes again my sophomore year. I got fourth in the mile, and it was the first time I'd run on a board track. And Coach Broke put in his notes, "Hey, pretty good effort for the first time you've ever set foot on a board track." It was difficult, but I did have a good enough spurt that I could make the move when I needed to, coming down the home in a straightaway to get around people.
How was academics for you at Bowling Green through these first years?
And they were fine. I started out as a geology major, ended up being a history major.
Yeah.
I was a B student, and for what it's worth, I became an NCAA postgraduate scholar. At the end, there was 5 of us back in 73 that got that award. I did okay.
That's very cool. You don't have to name names. Was there anybody on your team that was at risk of not staying eligible with enough passing enough credits?
Then the distance runners they're all pretty bright. The brightest guy on our team was Bob McComber, and he was 4.0 student in business. And Bob actually, after he got out of Rhodes, placed 17th the first time he ran in the Boston Marathon. Pretty doggone good.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into 1972. All the things that happened there, world record, the trials, the Olympics. Let's start before the Olympics, that whole year.
Started, of course, in cross country in 71. I was 12th in the nation in cross country. Prefontaine won it. It was at the University of Tennessee. Rhodes got 7th place in the nation. Matthew, back then, I don't know, other people you talk to, the MAC was a powerhouse in cross country. We had 3 schools. Western got the 5th. We were 7th. Miami got 15th. We had 3 teams in the top 15. And that was pretty typical for the MAC. But anyways, so that was that. Indoors, I ran the mile indoors. So I won the mile NCAA indoor mile. And then going into the outdoor season, it was just normal conference meets and Central Collegiate Conference meet and just getting prepped up for the NCAA. So I went on and I won the NCAA. I ran 3:39.7. That was a meet record. And that was the prep going into the Olympic trials.
For your strategy of running the mile 1500, had it evolved over that time? And how much before the race were you thinking about strategy, or was it more dynamic?
I was always thinking of strategy, but my strategy was always to stick with the leaders and keep my gap where I wanted it and rely on my kick. And it was the type of thing, I don't want to get egocentric because I wasn't, but I do think that people have to know their strengths and weaknesses. And I felt that my strength was that I could stick with any pace and still kick. And I could accelerate off of any pace. My weaknesses was I sometimes ran stupid races. I'd get caught up boxing, or not thinking during the race. So I had to be careful with that. Um,
And what do you think of opinion, the generalist opinion of these races are? In the 800 meters, you can make a mistake
yep.
and still win. And the 1500 in a mile, did you find out? You said you made some bad races.
Yeah.
So that took a couple miscalculations.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think you only get one mistake in that 800, and especially nowadays, it's so quick. The 1500, you can make more, and that's probably why I like the mile better. But back to your question too about the strategy, the tactics in the mile. No, back then you went out in 301, 302, 303, and you kicked. That was the strategy. And when Ryan ran his 351, went out like that and then just blistered the last lap. Whereas now they're doing it much more consistent. I'm glad because of my career, I got to see the change that happened. I ran Prefontaine in 73, and we ran a good mile against one another. Then we went over to Scandinavia. I ran a double in Finland. I ran a half mile against Dieter Fromm, who was in the Olympic finals. And then the following day, I had to run 1500 meter, and there was a guy named Filbert Bailly. And Filbert went out in 154, which had never been in a race. And if you ever see the race, there was 12 of us in the race. We were strung out, single file. He just had us, and we're just sitting there going, I'm thinking, oh, he's coming back. There's no way he's going out 154 and keeping it going. We just kept going. So that was the transition where you took it out in the mile. That was the first time I ever saw that. He went on then to break the world record a month later, I think.
Your best mile time was in 73, ended up being the third of all time at that day. Let's jump to the Prefontaine
Okay.
race, because there's a saying that the Prefontaine Classic wouldn't be there without Bowling Green and without you in pre-running. Like you said, you weren't always the most gregarious, let's get to know each other runner, but you ended up rooming with Pre later, right?
I didn't room with them at the AAU meet, but we roomed together. We went over to overseas for about a month and a half, and we're together.
Yeah.
Pre came up to me. It's a good story, Matthew. I think it is. We're at the AAU in Bakersfield, the AAU National Championships, and we had already decided before that to go over to Scandinavia with Ralph Mann, the guy organized it, Jaakko Tuominen, who was a Finnish Olympian. He had set us up for meets, and we said, we're going to go over. So anyways, Pre came up to me at the end of the meet. He said, hey, we're going to go over to Scandinavia, Finland anyway. Why don't you come on up to Eugene? We're having a fundraiser, and we'll run against each other in a mile. I'll take you out in 256 flat. We'll go after the world record in the mile. That's kind of, I'm not doing anything before we head over. Why don't we do that? And that was that was called the Restoration Meet, because they were trying to raise money for the demolition of one of the stands to build up a new stadium. And that became the Bowerman Classic, and then it became the Prefontaine Classic. But it was all based on that mile run. They had the posters around town. Here's the big mile with their star Prefontaine and me.
And he hit 256, right? You guys went through 256.
He went 256. He had a better rabbit than Prefontaine, right? And he wasn't a rabbit. He wanted to win. He thought he could take me. He was a competitor.
But his strength was not in the kick.
I'll tell you though, Prefontaine, he ran a 354.6. He became the 9th fastest miler of all time. And a lot of people don't look at Pre as a miler, but he was one heck of a miler. It was just a great race, and it just developed perfectly. And the fans out there are so knowledgeable. They just loved it. And it was a high point. And then we had a good time together over in Scandinavia. He was a crazy guy. I mean, he was out there. And I wasn't. But it was fun to be with him, that's for sure, and get to know him. He's never a person I don't think you get to know really, but I think we got to know each other. We trained because it was Ralph Mann ran the sprints and the hurdles, and Steve and I had to train together while we were over there. So,
Did you cross paths with Jerry Lindgren?
I did not. Jerry was there. I saw him. He won the cross country title in '69, which was my first time I ran in there, but he was first and I was 30th. I didn't get there.
Well,
I did a little bit in pro track. He ran pro track, but he was very erratic. Jerry would be there. It was just different. It was different.
I tell you what, I asked him about tying the 6-mile record with Billy Mills, and he can go through every lap.
Really? Wow. Wow.
His memory and his planning, and it's just crazy fun to talk. It's crazy. Yeah, he's a unique individual. How were you feeling before the Olympic trials, and what was your whole process for you ran 2 different events?
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit again with
No.
for Coach Brote's mentality. After the NCAA miles, I had qualified to go in the mile. And he thought, Dave, he says, I'm going to send you out to Seattle, the AAU national championships there. I want to have you run the 800 meters. And this is 2 weeks before the trials. I had not met the qualifying mark yet for the 800 meters. And so he said, if you do well and you qualify, then we'll think of maybe having you run the 800 meters in the trials. But we'll just do it as a speed workout because you'll be doing a speed workout 3, 4, and 5 days before the 1500 meters anyway. And if you get eliminated, we'll just do a speed work. We'll just continue the workout. So it was his mentality was 1500 meters. And so I went out there, ran 147.1 and 147.2 and qualified for the 800 meters. So that put his plan into motion. Going into the Olympic trials, again, I'm not looking at the 800 meters being my event, but made it through the prelims and semis. That whole race and that time was all because of Jim Ryan in the third 200 meters. Jim took off. I was in last place, normal place, coming through the first lap, and they came through at a pretty decent pace. But going into that first turn of the second lap, Ryan just took off. And he started his kick. It was maybe 300 yards to go. And I didn't know any different. I just thought, hey, I'm going to stick with him. Jim Ryan is the world record holder. He'll pull me to a good time. So I stuck close with him. And that's what enabled the time to be what it was. And then
What was your perception of the world of track for the general public? How did you guys feel at that point? So in 1972, big changes coming. Of course, the Olympics was always big, and even events and the sprinters of America were always headliners. What was your take on that?
I had a very positive feel towards it. And of course, when you're at Eugene, Oregon for the Olympic trials, you can't get a more knowledgeable fan base excited. It was a high. And distance running back in the late 60s, early 70s, we had it going in the United States. We had Jim Ryan, Marty LaCory, Rick Woolhutter, Frank Shorter, Steve Prefontaine. It was a who's who. And we were at the international level competing. So I felt that I was running in the heyday of distance running in the United States for a long time. And I think we've come back from that. We're doing absolutely fantastic now. But there was a period of time after that where we weren't doing as good as a lot of people thought we should.
There's so much to talk about in just the next few months. Then in your personal life, you were about to get married. I'm just going to ask because you've talked about it. They published an article about sex in the Olympics, and you decided that, or I don't know who decided, but you and your wife went together. I guess you didn't stay together in the Olympic Village, but how much was going on in your life as you went to the Olympics, and how much time did you go over ahead to acclimate?
I got married 6 days after the Olympic trials. It was over July 9th. I got married July 15th. Jan and I went on a honeymoon for 3 days at Salt Fork State Park in Ohio. And then we had to come back and go to Bowdoin College and be there on July 20th. We were at Bowdoin for a week, got our uniforms, got some training in, got acclimated as a team. And we went over to Oslo, Norway for 3 weeks. We ran some meets over there. We trained over there. And then we got to Munich around August the 19th or 20th. And then we'd be there through the end of the Olympics, which was around September 9th or 10th. So we were there 2.5 weeks or so to get acclimated and get used to what's going on.
all these things to talk about. Of course, the massacre that happened in between your events. The story's been told, but I haven't talked to anybody. What was the feeling? What was the psychological and emotional impact of that?
It was huge. Frank Shorter was my roommate. We had Kenny Moore, got fourth in the marathon that year, was in our room. John Anderson, who won the Boston Marathon the following year, was there. Mike Manley and Steve Morgan, 7 guys in our room. We could see the building where it was happening. We were about 150 yards away. When that all happened and transpired, obviously you'd think it just put a darkness over the Olympics. And I know Frank and Kenny, who probably thought more through it than I did, thought maybe we shouldn't continue running. It was before the marathon. And they obviously came around there and telling you, I think we all came around to thinking, no, that would give the terrorists a victory. We don't want that. We want to keep going, show them that they can't do that to us, to the Olympics. But it did. It took the sparkle off of the Olympics for some reason. We're just athletes. We're just out there running on here. This is a human tragedy that's occurring within 100 yards of where we're sitting.
Let's talk about the 800 meters, the races up and including the final. But did you have a chance to tour? Were you a tourist around Munich or Germany at all?
Oh, yeah. Jan was there. We put her up in a suburb about 15 miles outside of Munich in Haar. So I would travel back and forth to see her. I'd bring her into the Olympic Village. And sometimes Frank's wife, Louise, at the time would sleep out on our balcony every once in a while, and Jan would do the same thing. We were able to do some things. It was really funny, Matthew. We had, of course, Kenny Moore was a finalist for Rhodes Scholar. And Frank went to Yale. So you got all this brain power. They gave us this little kit. It had some clear plastic. It was a plastic bag, and it had a booklet that had a picture of what the passes looked like, true to life size. So we went in there. We cut this little pass out. We went and got our wives Kodak Instamatic pictures. And believe it or not, in Sweden, I'd run a race in Stockholm, and they gave me as a prize 3M Scotch tapes, all kinds of Scotch tapes. What kind of gift is that? We had double-sided tape. We took their pictures. We put their pictures on this pass. We took the plastic bag, cut it apart, taped it together, and we had a pass that looked absolutely, we made them gymnasts. And all our rides were gymnasts, and they could just walk right through the gate and get in there. It was really, really just phenomenal. But yeah, we were able to do it. I went down to downtown Munich to Marienplatz and went to the Hofbrauhaus and saw the sites. My parents were over there. My coach was over there. So we got to see them and do it. Once it got close to the events and the events are going on, I was very focused on just doing that.
I know that the 1500 meters, I think you ran 3 days in a row, but let's talk about the 800.
Yep.
The qualifying, the races to the final.
Yeah. Back then we ran 3 races in 3 days. So you had the prelims, semis, and the finals. And I don't remember a whole lot about the prelims. Obviously made it through. Okay. Wasn't super fast time. The semis, what I remember about it though, was I was in a block with 100 meters to go. And I had a guy in front of me. I had guys all around me, behind me. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do and thought maybe I'd just slow way down and try to reaccelerate to the outside. It would have been hard to do that. But anyway, so my adrenaline was just pumping like crazy. The guy in front of me cuts around the turn, moves out to the second lane to elbow the guy out behind him. And the whole first lane, it was like the parting of the Red Sea. The whole first lane just opens up. And I'm so pumped. I just slowed through there and I ended up winning the heat, but I could have very easily got eliminated in the semifinals.
Had you run against Yevgeny Arsenov before then? Did you know about, he hadn't lost in a few years.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had often wondered about that stuff, and I go through my scrapbooks, and I ran against Yevgeny Arsenov in the mile at the indoor Cleveland KFC meet of all places.
Oh my God.
And I can remember I was warming up down, says, Freddie, Sid say, Sid was always, he was the student of the sport. He comes up to me, goes, you know who that is? And I go, no. He goes, that's Yevgeny Arjunov. And he said, for the Soviet Union, he's undefeated in the 800. Now he was building up his speed. So went the mile. I think he got sixth in that race. I won the mile and he got sixth. So the answer to your question is yes, I did. I didn't know it. And also Mike Boyd, I've ran in several races and I didn't realize until, and Robert Uko, I didn't realize until really after the Olympics and almost years later, I was going through my results sheets and I see their names pop up and go, shoot, heck, I ran against those guys.
Well, now I think he probably knew your name then. Maybe he wasn't that trying to be that competitive mile. Maybe it was training, but yeah, you're somebody who torched him in the earlier. Interesting.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I think he was so focused on the 800, he probably didn't care. But yeah, who knows? It'd be interesting to talk to him and see. I just wasn't, this will tell you my mindset because it's a true story. When I finished that 800-meter run in the Olympic trials, I'm coasting down. Sid Sink's the first person to run on the track and congratulated me, hugged me. And he goes, look at the time. And I look up, it's 1:44.26. I go, yeah, pretty good. He goes, that's a world record. And it's not like I was stupid. I probably noticed the world record, but I was so far away from it at 1:47, it wouldn't have clicked that I could run a 1:44. But that was true about a lot of the competitors that I ran against. I didn't know a lot of those guys in the Olympics. I'd know their best times and things, but I just had to go in confident. I just had to have this inner confidence that no matter what came my way, that I could overcome it.
You weren't running for time. Once you're at these races, you're just running to win the race. Yeah.
Yeah. It was all through my career. I always ran to win. And in fact, in that race for the Olympic, one of my big regrets was in that race with Prefontaine. He brought me through in 2:56. Why in the heck wouldn't have I just said, hey, you know what? I'm just going to bust this. I'm going to go all out. But I was so afraid of tying up in the last 100 or 200 and have him beating me that I was caught. And who knows if I could have got it. I certainly could have got closer, maybe. I don't know. Or I may have tied up and lost the race. Who knows?
Yeah, that's great. Okay, the race itself, it's been played by everybody I know. I was a miler, every half miler has seen it 3-digit number of times, if not more. Everybody loves the race. It's labeled as the greatest comeback in athletics history by some of the people that post it. You tell the story again, Dave.
It was a combination of factors. I failed to mention, it sounded like I was always injured, but I got an injury at the training camp in Bowdoin. Bowerman was very much against me getting married. I wanted to prove to him that getting married wasn't going to affect me. I did a fairly difficult workout without proper warm up, and my knee started hurting me right after the workout. My mileage was cut down to 0 for the 5 and 6 weeks before the Olympics. I wasn't able to run at all. I was able to get it up to 30 miles a week. I think he even had 1 week where I was able to get 50 miles in, but I was far off of what I should have been. I should have been doing 70 to 75 miles a week, at least in my opinion, and what Coach Broad had me doing. So anyways, you go into the finals. I'm just not feeling, even though when you walk on the track, you got to believe you could win. But in the back of my mind, I'm feeling like I'm not in the condition I was in the Olympic trials. And if it's just a game buster race, I'm not going to be able to keep up. And so they took off very quickly, 24.9, first 200 meters. And I say that I couldn't keep up. I probably better way of saying it is I didn't feel comfortable keeping up. I felt that if I would have gone out that fast in the condition that I was, that I wouldn't be able to run the race the way I'd wanted to. I hung back. I ran out in 25.9. So I was a second behind basically. And that was my salvation, really. The fact they went out quickly. The combination of going out quickly and Arjunov starting his kick with 300 meters to go was kind of the deciding factors. Just like any coach would tell you, you don't try to catch up all at once. After that first 200 meters, I was behind. Luckily, it was a combination of them slowing down and me maintaining a certain pace. And I was able to regain contact after running 200 yards at the crossing the line. First lap, I was in the back of the pack. And then I was able to relax for about 100 yards or so. And because I had contact, my confidence had built tremendously just to have contact with the back of the pack. And then Arjunov just took off like a bolt on that back stretch, took the lead. And so I had to kind of go with him. I wasn't ready to start my kick yet, but I moved to the outside lane 2 to keep out of trouble and just kept that distance between me and him, what I'd consider would be my striking distance between me and him. And I started my kick with about 180 meters to go. Doesn't look like it, but that's what I let go. But at the top of the stretch, 4th place. And if you look at the race on video, we stayed almost the same distance apart for the first half of the home stretch. I was the same distance behind Robert Uko and Mike Boyd and Arjunov all the way down. And then things developed in the last half where Robert Uko ran out of steam and started falling back. I was able to pass him. And as I got closer to the finish line, I felt I could get Mike Boyd. I felt I was in a good position. As a runner, you kind of sense how your momentum's going and how they're running. And I felt, yeah, I'll be able to get him for the finish line. But with Vinny, I didn't feel I could get him until maybe 2 meters from the finish line, 1 or 2 meters. He started really faltering right at the end. And like any coach would tell you, you keep running through that finish line. And when I leaned, I thought I had won. I raised my arms shortly after I crossed the finish line because he had fallen almost immediately over the finish line, just plop. That peripheral vision, when you lean, you kind of sense someone there. Well, I didn't sense him there, but 300ths of a second is too hard to humanly know what you did.
Yeah, they didn't record times at that level, so they called it at the time was a tie, I think, officially. I don't know, did they record?
Actually, they did. They broke it into hundreds. So I ran 1:45.86 and he ran 1:45.89.
Okay, yeah.
But on the scoreboard, it said 1:45.9 for both of us.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the hat.
All right. Yeah, the hat. Well, the hat I got was interesting. I was looking through my stuff today because I told you I had to study up and make sure I knew what I was talking about. We had a great 4-mile relay team at Bowling Green. Great relays. We set the American citizens record at 16:19. It's not a great time, but back then it was good. 16:19 for all 3 of the guys. The other 3 runners all wore hats. One wore a beret, one wore a golf cap, one wore a stocking hat. And I was the only one in this picture that didn't have it. And I always tell people I'm a very slow learner. They all had hats. By the time they gave it up, I started wearing it. But it started because Sid Sink really wanted the guys to wear the hats. I just didn't want to wear it back then. And during my injury time in 71, when I was injured, Coach Broad had me officiate track meets. So I was shot put, pole vault, all that stuff. They gave all the officials these golf caps, mesh golf caps. So I started training in the summer of 71, hot and humid up in Ohio, started wearing this hat, sun visor, same reason you'd wear it now. I had pretty long hair all over. But not long hair, not shoulder length hair or anything. But yeah, it would get down in my eyes if I didn't wear a hat though.
All right, so I've heard some stories. I can't remember exactly where you keep your Olympic gold medal and where you keep your hat.
The Olympic gold medal I used to keep in my underwear drawer. I figured no one would go through my underwear drawer to find anything. But it's in the safety deposit box now. They won't replace them. So I don't keep it here at home. My hat is in the track and field Hall of Fame with my uniform. Matthew, I got to tell you about the uniform. So I was getting jammed situated outside of Munich. First day we were there in Munich. I got back late to the Olympic Village and they had already handed out the uniforms. And so I walk in and I go, here to get my uniform. All they had left was an extra large jersey and a triple X pair of trunks for a shot putter. I could put both my legs in one of these things. And I go, none of this stuff fits me. And they go, that's all we got left. That's what we got. I go up to the room and I go, I don't even know what I'm going to wear. I don't have 2 trunks. Shorter ran for the Florida Track Club. And his shorts were similar color to the Olympic shorts. And he says, Dave, here, no problem. You can wear my shorts. And on the side, he goes, and if you win, you can have them. and thinking, I'm going to get these things back in a matter of hours. So my hat is in the Track and Field Hall of Fame. It was put into the Hall of Fame 3 years before I was put in the Hall of Fame. And I tell people that Frank Shorts beat him into the Hall of Fame as well, because they're in the Hall of Fame, but neither of us were even thought of put in.
What was it like in the room after you won the gold medal?
Oh, it was exciting. Frank and Kenny were still in there prepping for the marathon, so it wasn't crazy, but they were excited. I remember Frank was so mad because there was a guy from Life magazine was going to do a spread on me for the 800 meters front cover, and it was knocked out because of the incident that happened 2 days afterwards. But anyways, Life magazine was up there taking photos. My parents were in there. Jan was in there. We're celebrating, and Frank was like, get out of here. Let them enjoy this moment. You don't need to be taking pictures. He was pissed about the whole thing. But anyways, and I was too stupid to know any different. I was taking it in and enjoying it. So it was fun.
On that incident, the story's been told about Prefontaine and the impact of that event on him, giving an extra rest day to La Signora and changed everything. Well, do you remember anything about his thinking, mentality, attitude during that delay?
No, Pre did room with us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Steve was not one of the guys in there. We had the steeplechasers, John and Kenny and myself. But yeah, I really can't speak to his mental health. Pre was very tough mentally. He was a very tough trainer, and he was very tough mentally. I think he would have gotten through it okay.
In the 1500, like you say, anything can happen. Boxed in, Jim Ryan, unfortunate, tripped. Other qualifiers for the finals ran the same time as you did in your heat, to the 10th of a second. What do you remember about that?
I remember it was probably my greatest disappointment in track. Because my goal, if you look at my workout sheets before the Olympic trials, my goal was to win the 1500 meters. And then after I tied the world record, then the 800 became my primary goal because it was first. But extremely disappointed. My training logs, I have little notations at the end of the day that I tell you how I felt, and they just mean something to me. So it may be horrible, bad, fair, good, very good. That's the best I could feel. And of all the races I ran in the Olympics, the semifinals of the 1500 meters, I had very good. I felt outstanding. And it came back to bite me because I felt so good and so comfortable with myself. I thought I could give these guys more distance than I should have. And Hansen from Belgium nipped me out. It was probably about the same, it was a photo finish, and he got it. Then I can just remember how badly I wanted to be in the finals of that 1500 meters. And it was my own fault. I waited too long to start my kick, but it wasn't anything physical. I was feeling great. It was just a mental error on my part and being a little overconfident in my own abilities, I think.
Well, what would come out of that Olympics, of course, Frank Shorter's marathon win was quite a dramatic psychological change for people watching this. He looked different than marathon runners in the past. But for you, that race it has become legendary, historic, one of the most replayed races of all time. How did your life change?
It changed dramatically. I will have to say, Mazzy, just think about this. This to me is mind-boggling. The last gold medals we won in the 800 and the marathon, we were roommates. What are the odds? What are the odds of that happening? Anyways, I was super excited for Frank, and just a tremendous marathon, and really our room. Kenny Moore got fourth, Jack Bassler got ninth, not too shabby on the world scene in the marathon. So it was exciting. But yeah, back to your question, it changed. Just think what my life would be. I think, what would my life be like if I ran 0.4 of a second less? What if Arjunov would have nipped me at the line? It's sad to say about the United States, but a lot of times we just think, first place winners, you're second. We want you to be first. And so I don't fool myself. I think if I would have gotten second place, my life would be totally different. But it's been a surprise to me. I thought people would forget about that race by the next Olympics in Montreal. I thought, great, you won the gold medal, but people just wouldn't remember. But YouTube, it's a whole different life. My son put that up on YouTube in 2006, and it went viral, and then it's just easy enough to see it anymore.
I wonder if the sale of golf caps went way up. I grew up in middle of the 70s in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and my buddy, he finished second. He ran in the cap, and we all relived that race and watched it and idolized it, and it was an inspiring thing.
Well,
Uh,
thank you. They
I
won't
wanna-
let you run in those hats anymore.
yeah,
You know, they
yeah.
capped that right after 72. The IOC said, no more, not on the track. They'll let you do it in the marathon, but won't let you do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I was officiating at some people had to have exactly matching uniforms, no jewelry, all those changes that were happening right after. That's another thing that happened in sport. Did you know anybody before you turned professional? What was the state of money moving around?
It was under the table. Luckily for me, it wasn't before the Olympics. It was all in 73. The meet directors would look at you like you're crazy. You're the ones that people are coming here to see, and we're the ones getting all the money. And they felt we should share that money with the athletes. And of course, Pre was very much an outspoken person about that the AAU had way too much control over the athletes. I can remember overseas with Pre, the U.S. team went to Africa for a meet, and then they came up to Munich, and we were going to do Munich, Milan, and then Minsk, Russia. We were up in Scandinavia running, and I remember we got this telegram from all of us, you guys need to get your ass down here. You know, you're part of the U.S. team. And Bree was like, we'll get down there when we want to, and if we want to. And but I remember walking into the team meeting in Munich. We had come down from Copenhagen, I think, and I felt so proud walking in with Bree. It was like he walked in defiance of the AAU. And me, I'm just timid guy. I'm just going along for the ride thinking, yeah, but he was very articulate. He was very bright, and he was very outspoken about wanting athletes' rights, which was fantastic.
I hope it's not a painful question to have to address the medal ceremony on the stand
Oh, yeah.
with the hat. Okay.
Yeah.
You were
It's
so
just,
excited. You were lost in the moment, and the hat was on your head when.
Oh, yeah.
On the
Yeah. It was a very honest mistake. It doesn't bother me. It was hurtful to me at the time because I felt more ashamed of myself than anything. But it's like a guy's wallet. You don't even know you got it in your back pocket. I had my hat on, and I was so new to international competition. Think of it. I go there. I don't think I ever stood on a stand. I'm not sure of the Ohio State stand. We didn't have stands back then, podiums. So I'm on this stand, and all of a sudden you start hearing the national anthem. You put the medal on, you hear the national anthem. You're like, what am I supposed to do? Luckily, I was smart enough to know to turn to the flag. I put my hand over my heart, and I just, in the moment, I was so flustered, I think I'd say. And I just took in the national anthem, got a tear in my eye. But the first question I got, we went upstairs, and this Australian journalist, first question he asked is, what were you protesting by putting your hand over the USA patch and keeping your hat on? Because it was right after 68. And that's when it hit me. And that was just like, I was almost speechless. I was like, oh man, I did. I had my hat on. Here I'm Air Force ROTC. You know, I'm going to get court-martialed. Who knows what's going to happen to me? And I was embarrassed about it. And I wouldn't do anything. I'm just the type of person, I'd never do anything intentionally to embarrass my country. I just wouldn't. So
it turns out to be now just the best picture.
well, it was memorable in a lot of ways. A lot of things were just a lot of movement. A lot of things were just happening back then. I got to tell you, one of the big highlights of my career happened right outside the stadium. I was jogging back after the 800 meters to the Olympic Village. A guy stops me, says, great race in the 800 meters. And I stop, I shake his hand. He goes, I'm Roger Bannister. And so I have a picture of me. I was sitting there going, are you kidding me? Like my idol as a miler. And then there's a woman walking by with one of those Instamatic cameras. I go, please can I just get you to take a picture? So I got this Kodak Instamatic picture of me and standing next to Roger Bannister, which have a highlight
Yeah.
for, yeah.
When did you next meet up with Evgeny?
1973, that Minsk race, Pre decided to go back after Milan, Italy. He was tired. He went back to the States. So I went over to Minsk with the team. He ran the 800. I ran the 1500 against Lepori. And I was sitting in the stands after the 1500. He finished the 800. He comes over. He's looking into the stands. He sees me, or eyes me. He comes bounding up, and I thought, he's just going to beat the shit out of me. But he came up, he was very nice, shook hands. He didn't speak a lot of English, but we were able to sit there. I got a picture of ourselves together. And that was the next time. So a year later, he was very nice about it. I'm sure he was just devastated at that Olympic race. He had it all the way to the end. And you could tell on the victory stand, his head was down, and I would have felt the same way. I would have felt the same way. I know that devastation.
It turns out he hadn't lost an 800 race for 4 years. He won the indoor European, the outdoor European. Yeah,
Yep.
he was unbeatable. He was
Yep.
unbeatable till
Yep.
that day.
I've never asked him, Matthew, I think it'd be a great question is, why did you start your kick with 300? I think he would have won if he would have just hung there and started his kick like normal, because he had great speed in the 100. That's what he usually did. But it'd be a great question to say, were you feeling it, or was that pre-race strategy, or?
I'm in touch with Yevgeny on Facebook chat, and we've done a bit of talking. I talked with him quite a while. My wife being Ukrainian, we're interested. I said, I know a little bit about the geography, where you're from. I want to tell my nephews about where you're living. And he showed me a video of his destroyed house. And he just has so far kept saying, I'm not in the mood to interview. So I think that will change over time.
Yeah. I was thinking probably a few weeks ago going, Yevgeny, when did we meet last? He may be the only one. No, we were in Minsk in that photo that I have. But just to verify, funny, Matthew, I was walking into my bedroom last night. I don't know where these thoughts come from, but I sit here and I think, outside of my family, I probably have related to his name and spoken his name more than anybody else in my.
Sure.
Every time I'm talking about it, it's Yevgeny Arshinov. And
Yeah.
what an impact that's had on my own life.
Great. Okay, what about you on the idea of the Hall of Fame? You're in several Hall of Fames, the Ohio Legends, the National Hall of Fame, Olympic, all these Hall of Fames. How do you feel about those honors, and how did you feel when you received them?
I don't know how to put it in words. It's such an honor. And the National Hall of Fame was just beyond my dreams. Not quite sure how I got in, but it's the collegiate one that just happened last year. It's one thing to be remembered for one race. And, that's the thing. The Olympics, they see it's much, you're known for that one race. It's nice to know that you got into a Hall of Fame based on your total list of works and accomplishments. And so when I got into the Collegiate Hall of Fame, that was really memorable to think that they felt that I had a good enough collegiate career to get in there. And of course, you're seeing the other guys getting in and you're going, wow, you're in great company. And so just honored to be thought of in that way.
And you changed majors, you went into history, but then you had a career in administrative in academia, and you worked in several colleges. How was that? How did that career choice happen?
That career choice was perfect for me because it was all the lessons I learned in the sport of track and field and cross country. It was all about goal setting, hard work, perseverance, thinking strategically. I had goals every year. I had to get a certain class size. I had to get a certain diversity, state diversity, racial diversity. I had to get a certain net tuition revenue. It was like juggling 7 balls at one time. Very similar to the way we think in track. It was just the perfect fit. Plus, I was always working with 17, 18-year-olds because you always just working with the high school seniors, juniors, and seniors. So it worked out well. I started out actually coaching. When I was running pro track, I needed something to do in the off season. So I started coaching at Walsh University, Walsh College back then in 74 and 5, and started their track team. coached cross country for him, and I was assistant director of admission. When I went to Bethany College in West Virginia in 77, 76, I had to make a decision. I coached for my first few years cross country and track. About 1980, I had to make the decision on whether I wanted to keep coaching or go into administration, and I chose to go administration. When I went to Rhodes College in 83, I was total admissions and financial aid. And I loved it. I loved it. But it's interesting. All the kids that I accepted and gave scholarships to, I've received very little notes. Thank you for admitting me. Thank you for the scholarship or something that they may write. But I still hear from all my athletes, and I still have great friendships with all my athletes. It's that coach athlete connection that I had with Coach Bro, Coach Daniels, and you see it when you're in coaching. It sticks with them their whole life. These guys are 65 years old now. We're still talking about what we did back when I was at Bethany and Walsh. I was with my Walsh runners just last year. Several of them came to a talk I had at the Football Hall of Fame. And then I've been talking to my people at Bethany probably in the last month. I get emails from them about things that are going on. It's a great relationship that you build in the sport.
Yeah. It's a great community. I had a very short career, ended by injury, but the friends, I still have lifelong friends. And we have some friends in common that not just the people I've met from doing these interviews. Kerry Green, do you remember Kerry?
I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Kerry's background was he grew up in my little town of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, was a non-special cross-country runner, ended up doing amazing things in the marathon, 5 decades of Boston under 3 hours, still running to this day. I say it's just a great positive person that the things that I can relate to is I'll see him at a reunion and it's like you saw him yesterday. Yeah. Things just go back.
Isn't it true? I'll get to go with my Bowling Green teammates, and we have a golf outing every year. This is last fall we're together. We're talking about trash that happened back then. And the funny thing about it, they'll tell stories that I have no remembrance of some of these things, but a lot of them I still remember them like they were just yesterday. And
how competitive is that golf match?
It gets competitive. It's not for me because I'm so bad at golf, so I don't try to. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm bad. I can't be any better than I am. So,
one last thing about your interest in the sport, or how much of a fan are you now? How closely do you follow middle distance running and the rest of the running sport?
I don't, Matthew, and it's not like I don't enjoy it. You can see it. I tape all the meets. I will watch them on TV, but I'm not a student of the sport like I used to be, where you need to know all the competitors. I've watched the good races. I'll make sure I watch the Prefontaine Classic and see those great miles that they still have. But we haven't had the wealth of 800-meter runners coming up. We've had the Johnny Grays over time, and Clayton Murphy recently, and of course, Centrowitz at 16, which I saw he's going to retire after Paris now. So we've had luck in the recent years. There was a drought there for a while in the 1500 and the 8. And I probably lost a little of my interest at that time. And so I love to talk about it. And I love to talk about running in the 70s and the kind of remembrances. But if I'd stayed in coaching, I think I probably would have been much more oriented towards it. But my life became admissions and financial aid there for the longest time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is an odd or ridiculous question, but does a day ever go by that you don't think about the Olympics and your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I used to say in my talk that a day hasn't gone by. And I'd say it probably is more accurate to say that a week has not gone by. But I don't think a week has gone by where at some time I may just be walking, like I told you last night, I was thinking to walk into the bedroom and I thought of Yevgeny Arjunov. It's that kind of thing where it just pops up. And even 50 years afterwards, I'll be at a golf match and I'll say something, say my name, and I'll go, someone will recognize me. So it brings it back, or they'll ask questions. I was in an interview last year. Jonathan Hawk produced one of Gathering of Champions over in Munich. And I can remember just thinking how important that 2 minutes and 300ths of a second, both of those things, two things that had a tremendous impact on my life in just a fleeting moment in time, just a snap, really, in time would have an effect on a person. But it certainly has on my life.
Speaking from all the other middle distance runners of the 70s, you had an impact on our life. That moment, that event was inspirational. You've had impact through all the people you've coached, the students you've got into college, although not all of them are willing to write a thank you note. You've had that great impact. It's a great life. You've been very generous with your time. Thank you so
Right.
much today.
Hey, it was a pleasure talking to you, Matthew. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.